Hello and welcome to OPA GCSE Sociology, and today we're going to be looking at what are conjugal roles. So, for the do now, it doesn't apply so much. We're just going to skip that. Obviously, we'll do that when you get back in class with the knowledge schemas. So let's just jump straight in to the first bit. So, what are conjugal roles? So, try and come up with your own definitions. Obviously, you've not seen this at all before, and try and write down what you think it is meant by conjugal relationships, conjugal roles, and the domestic division of labour. If you don't want to write it down, just have an idea in your head what each one of them means, and then we're going to see how your definition compares to the actual definition. Okay, so just pause the video, and then we'll come back to it. Right, so let's go through it. So conjugal relationships, so they're relationships between marital or cohabiting partners. You've then got conjugal roles, so they're the roles typically associated with male and female partners, or just partners in general. But generally is male and female for this course. And then finally, domestic division of labour. So that's household tasks divided between family members. So you might have seen the term division of labour previously, and that's just sort of the allocation of jobs. Domestic obviously meaning at home. So the home jobs and how they're allocated. And there's two types of conjugal roles that bot identifies, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. So once you've written down those three different concepts, conjugal relationships, conjugal roles, and domestic division of labour, the really key bit is that you get down those two different types of conjugal roles, because that's what the lesson's going to be based around, really. So you've got segregated conjugal roles. So that's where the partners have separate roles. Generally, it's based on the idea of the housewife and the breadwinner. So you might have the breadwinner going out and working, providing economically for the family, and you might have the housewife who is, performing the domestic chores at home, maybe emotional support as well. And in joint conjugal roles, that's where the partners share work. So that's household and childcare roles. And it's this blurring of tradition. So sort of modernization of conjugal roles, really. So it might be that the husband and the wife look after the kids, clean up, do the cooking. So just pause the video and then get those definitions down. There's a few to get down. Okay, so why are we looking at conjugal roles? So firstly, we've seen a shift in family type. So we're wondering, will this change the type of influence and the type of roles that are within different family structures? So is there an ultimate change in the conjugal roles because of the shift in family types? We're also looking at it because there's obviously been this feminization of society. So we want to see whether roles have become more equal domestically. So has this feminization in society led to a change in conjugal roles? And then finally, diverse family types. So different cultures still have different ideas about conjugal roles. So some more traditional and some not so traditional. And we want to know why that is. So they're the different reasons why we study conjugal roles. Don't need to get them down, just food for thought. Right. So to see whether you understand the difference between the instrumental and the expressive role that we've gone over previously, there's some statements on the screen, and in class what we've done, we went left hand side for instrumental, right hand for expressive. So you don't obviously have to get up, but just see if your ones line up or not. So what role would you expect to would you be expected to conduct in the 1950s? So just give yourself 5 seconds, choose one. So generally speaking, if you're a guy, it would have been instrumental. If it was a girl, it would be expressive role. So next one. How much of domestic responsibilities do you think men undertook during the 1950s? Okay, so again, I'm being quite absolute with this. So no responsibilities, all responsibilities. So give yourself 5 seconds. So yeah, generally you would have gone somewhere from, it's not completely left-hand side, maybe sort of a little bit on the way to the left-hand side. But you're getting the gist of this if you've made the point that men are taking on minimal or no responsibilities. Next one, how much of domestic responsibilities do you think men undertake today? So this is an interesting one. There's a big debate within sociology about this. And really it sort of maybe highlights where you align with this debate theoretically. So generally speaking, what happens is most of the class move towards all responsibilities. They don't go all responsibilities. But there is this big debate about how much domestic responsibilities, how much men overstate, how much they're contributing. And you generally, well, we're going to explore that, but you generally have the feminists saying that men are overstating it. And then you have the sort of neo-functionists saying the responsibilities are becoming really equal. Okay, do you agree with the statement women are more suited and should take on more or all the domestic responsibilities compared to men? So just another 5 seconds. So I think we only actually had 1 or 2 people in the class who said that women are more suited. So most say strongly disagree, and really, if you did agree with it, you're aligning there with Parsons' idea of primary socialization, that sex role theory, that women are biologically suited to be housewives and men breadwinners. Okay, right, so some key words here just for you to fill out. You're more than happy to write these down. I would encourage you to do so. You might want to wait to the end, but there's some key words to fill out there. I'm just going to give you 5 to 10 minutes, obviously pause that, and then we'll go over the answers, sort of what the difference is between segregated conjugal roles and joint conjugal roles. Right. So just going through, before we get onto that, difference between expressive and instrumental. So traditional conjugal roles were separated or separate into breadwinner and the housewife role. They were a reflection of that expressive and instrumental role. The expressive role, so that's associated with being a woman, is characterized as being passive and emotional, so good for sort of motherhood and whatnot. And the instrumental role is associated with men, so this idea of being assertive, constructive, going out and working. So what are the expected leisure activities and expected roles? So men are expected to be the breadwinners, provide for the family through work, housewives, to conduct domestic roles. So as we've said, cooking, childcare, cleaning, etc. Domestic roles men did perform were specific, sort of based around what is seen as instrumental. So anything sort of physical like DIY. And there's this segregation even within leisure activities. So men and women having different friendship groups and doing different things. So men might go out and go to the pub, go for a drink, whereas women might go out shopping. So it's these bit sort of cliche. So that's the traditional side of things. So we've got the partner is married or cohabiting relationships have clearly separate roles. The breadwinner takes on the responsibility for bringing in money and often makes the major decisions. Men traditionally seen to do more physical jobs around the house, such as repairing household equipment or DIY. The homemaker takes responsibility for housework, cooking, shopping, and childcare. They are also unlikely to be in full-time employment. Partners are likely to have separate friendship groups and take part in different leisure activities. So that was segregated. So what we're going to do before we go on and look at the joint conjugal roles, we're just going to very briefly sort of break up the lesson. We're going to look at what the downside of the segregated or the separate conjugal roles are. So we've got some questions here. So what does Wilmot and Young say has changed? Why do feminists disagree with Wilmot and Young? What is this second shift? What is the dual burden? And then what did Knudsen and Wanus find during their research? Okay, so we're just going to read through this article on the dark side of conjugal, separate conjugal roles. So the dark side of conjugal roles, you can read at your own leisure and mute me if not, just listen along. The greater equality in marriage or cohabiting relationships is often thought to be shown by women taking on more traditional men's work and men taking more shared leisure and decision making. In their research on families who have moved from Bethnal Green to Greeley, Young and Wilmot talked of changing roles as women became important breadwinners and men were judged to be participating more with domestic labour. Such was an apparent jointness between the marital couples that Young and Wilmot described their relationship both in the home and in their leisure time as companionate. So this idea of coming together. However, feminists in particular challenge the view that conjugal roles are becoming joint and are more equal and there is a more equal domestic division of labour. Arlie Hochschild coined the phrase second shift to highlight the fact that women working longer hours outside of the home are still responsible for the bulk of housework. Research also shows that where men do take on more domestic work, they tend to take on the more masculine jobs, such as DIY and non-routine jobs that do not need doing every day. Knudsen and Wanus examined 34 countries and found that there were no modern countries in the world where men do more work, or as much housework rather, as women. Where women are in paid work and are doing more of the housework, it is referred to as the dual burden. In effect, they have two jobs, one outside the house and one inside the house. The triple shift identified by Dunscombe and Marsden takes this one step further and adds emotional work to women's responsibility, where women take primary responsibility for the emotional needs of the family. There is, in addition, the possibility that elderly parents may need to be looked after as well. Increased life expectancy means that people are living longer, and the practical burden of caring for elderly relatives generally falls on the women in the family, even though they are already carrying most of the burden of housework and caring in their own homes. Older women in particular are taking on more caring responsibilities, with a quarter of women aged between 50 and 64 regularly caring for an ill, frail or disabled relative, as do 17% of men in this age group. So have another read through if you need to. Let's just go back to those questions. So just give you a moment to pause it. We'll go over the answers momentarily. Just maybe write down your responses to those. Just really to highlight, Wilmot and Young are the sort of the neo-functionalist side of things, whereas everyone else on there is really the feminist side. So Wilmot and Young are essentially saying that there's been this shift from segregated conjugal roles to sort of more joint conjugal roles. So there's more contribution from men, essentially. And even if it is segregated conjugal roles or separate conjugal roles, it's becoming a lot more equal. And they refer to this, in fact, as the march of progress. So things are getting better, that's what they're saying, more equal. The feminists disagree with that, and they essentially say, yes, there has been this feminization of the workplace, but it's assuming that it's men who are contributing to the extent they're saying that essentially men are overstating how much they're contributing and women are taking on more. So Hochschild, also Delphi and Leonard referred to this, the second shift or the dual burden. So we answer number 3 and 4 together here. It's just this idea that, yes, they are going out and working now, which is brilliant. And that's an economic shift, as it were, but they're also doing a domestic shift as well. So they're taking on the housework as well as working, and that's also referred as a dual burden. And then the study, so for number 5, they found that essentially men were overstating what domestic work they were doing. Generally speaking, if they were doing any, it was seen as masculine jobs, so things like DIY, as we discussed before, and jobs that are non-routine, so things that they could jump in and out of, and sort of not as routine and inconvenient as women's roles. And then that last one in there, sort of their radical feminist, Dunscombe and Marsden, the triple shift, they talk about it's not just this domestic role or economic role, it's also this emotional support. Okay, so providing care, maybe for elderly grandparents or even just for kids. Okay, so for number 5 now, I'm just going to give you a moment. We've done the segregated conjugal roles. So just for the joint conjugal roles, we're going to read through some stuff, and then after you can fill out your sheet. So joint conjugal roles, this is the idea that the breadwinner and the housewife's role is more blurred or gone completely. So the roles are more flexible. Generally, men and women are dual workers, both providing financially for the family. Domestic roles are blurred with no specific expectation of jobs. So we're just going to go through that. A partner is married or cohabiting relationships have interchangeable and flexible roles. Both partners are likely to be paid in paid employment. This refers to dual workers. Household tasks and childcare are more likely to be shared between male and female partners. And then finally, partners have the same friends and have similar leisure interests. They also both make family decisions. So instead of this sort of guys at the pub, girls go shopping, it might be that everyone goes out for a meal or something like that. So how are attitudes changing? Just to finish up on, so we can see that if we look at the NatSen stuff at the top there, that agree that a man's job is to earn money and women. So we're seeing this shift away from this idea that a man has to be the breadwinner and the woman a housewife. So it's gone from 28% agreeing with that statement to 13%. And then for the second statement, agree that the job is all right, but what most women really want to do is be at home with the children. So again, this assumption that women want to be the housewife and carer. So that assumption's dropped as well from 31 to 26% since 1989 to 2012. And then agree that preschool child is likely to suffer if his or her mother works. So it's this idea that the family somehow can't function without a housewife performing all his domestic roles. So we had 46% previously, now it's dropped to 30%. And then here, just got some free markers. So this is how it might be presented. So describe what is meant by joint conjugal roles, or describe what is meant by segregated conjugal roles. So pick one of those, use the die approach, give yourself 5 minutes, and that concludes the lesson.